I must have climbed the hill behind the house 100 times. I know every stone. But after that hill, there's another. And then another again. And after all that, then that's the sea. And I've never been there.
A Highland Song is a narrative adventure game set in the wilds of the Scottish Highlands. You play as Moira McKinnon, a teenager on her way to the sea for the first time. But to get there, you're going to have to find your way through the wild mountains and the valleys. You'll have to survive the weather, and you'll learn a bit about the stories and the history of the Highlands on the way.
Incle is an independent game studio based in the UK, and we specialise in narrative games, so we make games in all sorts of genres, but our main focus is on games that tell really strong stories.
Our most famous game is probably 80 Days, an adaptation of Jules Verne's classic novel.
The main hook of 80 Days is that you can go around the world any way you like. The way that Highland Song works is extremely similar to 80 Days. You start in one particular point and you can choose all sorts of different routes through the Highlands in order to reach your goal. But it also ends at a single point because you're trying to reach the lighthouse where your Uncle Hamish lives by the sea.
Finding the right gameplay for a game like a Highland Song can be really difficult. Gameplay is usually built around loops and patterns, but good narratives aren't made out of loops. We want to make sure that the character isn't doing anything just for the sake of gameplay, but everything the character's doing has to make sense within the narrative.
So the reason that we've essentially created our very first platforming game is that it just makes sense for the character within this scenario to be jumping and scrambling over rocks. Woohoo! And it even has a rhythm action mechanic. So in many ways, it's the most gamey game that we've ever created.
Moira's platforming abilities in a Highland Song are quite realistic. She has a limited amount of time that she can climb. She gets hurt if she falls too far. She can rest to recover her strength. She gets affected by weather and affected by nighttime and affected by cold. A lot of our mechanics are built around the tension between knowing where you are and being lost. We have a map mechanic which is all about that. It's about finding little pockets of knowledge, learning the names of peaks and understanding the history of the peaks to help you find your way through this world.
At Incle, we've always loved hand-drawn 2D illustration. We love how expressive it can be, especially for characters. Even when we made 3D games, we still had 2D characters because we loved the overall effect. I grew up in Scotland. When I was a teenager, I went up into the Scottish Highlands with 3 friends and we got lost and we had to stumble through rivers and bogs. It was really quite a chilling, scary experience. My parents are art historians, and there was always one painting in particular that they had that I used to love as a child. It had a little ruined castle by a loch and these Scots pine trees and this golden brown colour palette that was just so characteristic of the region. And so going for a really painterly aesthetic was a way to capture that. The more modern take on that is the digital paintings of concept artists such as Paul Scott Canavan, who we worked with on this project. And he came up with this really beautiful way of hand painting rocks and trees and grass and then assembling them as a huge collage, but then all built up so that the overall effect is of a painting coming to life.
When people play a Highland Song, I really want them to come away with a strong sense of the place, the Highlands themselves. There's this tension in that place between being full of story and history and the marks left behind by people, whether that's ruined farmhouses or whether that's just the names attached to the various peaks and the stories behind those names, which often go back a very, very long way indeed.
When I first kind of conceived of the game, I tried to forget everything about what games we'd made as a studio before, what games are out there, and I just tried to imagine, what do I want on my Switch for me to play right now? And pretty much a Highland song, as the way it looks and feels, popped into my head, and I can't be prouder of what we've created.